So today I'm going to talk about what countries you can sell to in your location independent business. Because you're location independent, you can sell to anyone in the world. And one of my favorite dumb questions I get, or favorite dumb excuses I get from people is, I can't start a business, or I can't start a they'll say, I can't start a location independent business because I live in a shithole country and no one has any money here. You don't need to sell to people in your own country. You can sell to people in another country who have a lot more money than you, especially if you speak English. And if you're saying this to me, you probably speak English. So it's location independence. I'm going to discuss that on this podcast. First, rule number one, and this might conflict with what I'm talking about here, but it doesn't. If you give me a few minutes, you'll see how this works. Rule number one I've stated before is you want to keep your business as simple as possible. So that means that ideally you are selling to people in your same country. Why? It's just easier. And that's the reality. And it is, if you want easy and simple for your first business. Now, what are the exceptions to those rules? There are several. One is what I just said. If you live in a very low-end country where everybody is poor, but you speak English, you are more than welcome to start a business that sells to an English-speaking country. They have to be English. You have to speak their language. I'll cover language in a second. In a country where people are used to paying high prices, like all those idiots who live in Los Angeles, all those morons who live in London, all these people live in Tokyo. Well, they don't speak English in Tokyo, but you get my point. You want to sell to people who are accustomed to paying high prices because they're stupid Westerners who don't leave their collapsing countries. There's millions of these people, and they have a lot of money, and they spend a lot of money. So what you do is you take your low-end, quote, shithole country, and when I say shithole, don't get upset, because these are people who say their own countries are shitholes. I'm not calling these countries shitholes. The people living there are calling their own countries shitholes. You are living in your low-end, cheap-ass shithole country. You sell to clients in a big, expensive city like New Yorkers. Why are you still living in New York? And you only need one or two clients, and you'll live like a little king in your own country. I mean, my God, if you're a Westerner, and so here's another, well, I'm jumping ahead of myself. So that's one example of when you could sell to another country on your first business. Here's another example. You are one of the intelligent Westerners who is leaving the collapsing West. And you go to one of my favorite countries, my second home, Paraguay, or something like Paraguay. So you move to Paraguay, where it's super, super cheap. You set up a business in the United States selling to dumb Americans who are staying in the collapsing USA, and you can charge them all kinds of money. And your money goes a long way in Paraguay, and again, you're a fucking king, even though you're only making a few $1,000s a month. In Paraguay, you're like a king, good to go. So if you're a Westerner who has done 5 flags, you've gotten the hell out of the collapsing West, and you're in a cheaper country, wherever, Thailand, Ecuador, doesn't matter, any cheaper country, you can still build a business from your former country. I am friends here in Dubai with a bunch of Germans, and so what they do is they move to Dubai, where they pay zero tax. They're not Americans, so they literally pay zero tax. And then they have German companies, and they make money from German clients, and they pay them in Dubai, and they pay no taxes. It's fucking great. So that's one solution in one area where that is very possible. Selling to your ex-home country, your ex-collapsing country. Perfectly fine, at least in the short to medium term. Long term, you probably don't want to be selling to Americans. America's got to collapse. We're talking about short to medium term here. When's the collapse going to happen, Caleb? Go watch my other videos and read my other blogs. Next one is, I said earlier that you want to make sure that you're selling to a country that speaks English. Another variation of this is you can sell to any country to a language you speak fluently. Fluently, not poorly like I speak Spanish poorly. Fluently. So if you speak a language outside of English, one of the big languages in the world where multiple countries speak that language, like Spanish, like Russian, like Arabic, like Chinese, where that one language hits a bunch of different countries, fine. You are able to do this if you're able to fluently speak these languages and you want to hit a particular country based on your niche, and you can expand other countries later based on the language that you speak fluently. That might be okay. By the way, I could do a whole thing on languages. If you're going to learn a foreign language, this is my opinion, learn a language where lots of countries speak it. Don't learn Portuguese. That's 2 countries. And one of the 2 countries doesn't even matter. when you speak Portuguese. It doesn't mean anything. German, why would you learn German? 2 countries speak German. You learn Russian, and that's about 20 countries. A little better. Chinese, lots of countries and like half the planet Earth, right? Spanish, an entire continent plus some other countries. So if you're going to learn a language, especially for business purposes, or even for, personal dating purposes, you guys, learn a language where a lot of people speak it. I'm learning Spanish very slowly, and I'm happy to learn it because a lot of Spanish countries. That's going to get a lot of traction for me. And it probably will help me also in my business life as well. Let's see. Currency valuations. This is another thing you can use when you start your business and you're selling to other countries. Geo-arbitrage. There's currency valuations and there's geo-arbitrage. So one is kind of what I mentioned earlier. You can sell something that is cheap to create in your country or some other country, but expensive in another country. And you sell it in that other country. Now, if you're starting your first business like I recommend, we're talking here about consulting, business services, things like that. You can create, in quote, those anywhere in the world, right? But if you live in a poor country and you sell consulting or a business service to people who live in expensive countries or expensive cities, perfectly fine. By the way, you can do this in the same country. If you live in a really big country, United States, China, India, what have you, okay, with a big population, you can live in a small, quiet little town that's really cheap, and you can sell to people in the big city 4 hours away. You can still sell within your country and use this disparity to your advantage. Here in Dubai, I am really tempted. I'm deciding if I'm going to do this yet, but there are these little towns, very nice, fancy, but very cheap towns here in the United Arab Emirates that are outside of Dubai that are like 1/4, 1/5, sometimes 1/6 the price of Dubai, but they're just as nice and they're quieter and they're on the beach. I'm very tempted at some point to maybe get a house or an apartment in one of these places and weekend there and then spend the week in Dubai or something like that. But so you don't have to leave the country to do this. You can niche to a big city in your current country. Don't think you have to be internationalized immediately, especially if you live in a small country, it's not an option. If you live in a big country, that's perfectly fine. Selling something that is cheap where you are and expensive where you're selling it. You got to keep that in mind. What is cheap for me but expensive to sell where I sell it? That's instant money. The other one is currency valuation. So I just recorded a video with one of our alumni from Nationality Business Builder. He just got his first client, and he was in Canada. And he realized that in Canada, because the Canadian dollar is weak against the American dollar, he could either charge Canadian companies something, or he could charge American companies around the same amount. So he decided to charge American companies $1,000 US for his service, which is $1,300 in Canada. Boom. So you can use that to your advantage. And they both speak English, and it's a very compatible culture. Canada/USA is not a big cultural shift, not a big deal. So you can pay attention to these things. How can I benefit from currency valuations and currency differences? Pretty awesome. I live in Paraguay half the year, and Paraguay's had a little boom lately because of the chaos of the currency in Argentina. A lot of Argentinians are coming over to Paraguay, or at least sending their money to Paraguay. One of my flags is Armenia. And several years ago, when the stupid Ukraine war began, Armenia, suddenly the Armenian dollar, or the Armenian dram, took off, and their banks started making a bunch of money because a whole bunch of Russian and Ukrainian money started flooding into Armenia. These things happen, so you can pay attention to these things and use these things to your advantage. Within reason, don't make your business too complicated. Please don't. Keep this stuff simple. I'm just giving you international options. You can also sell to neighboring countries. So if a neighboring country is the same, most usually, not always, usually neighboring countries have a very similar culture. So if you live in Uruguay, no problem selling to Buenos Aires. No problem. No problem selling to Sao Paulo. You live in Montevideo, Uruguay, right? Little city, okay? Great country to live in. One of the best countries in the world to live in, Uruguay, my God. Sao Paulo is right there. Sao Paulo is what? An hour and 45 minutes by plane? 23 million people? Okay. Now, I'm not saying Brazil is a great place to do business, but I am saying you can take advantage of countries that are right across the border, just like the guy did where he sold from Canada, Vancouver, BC, to Americans just right across the border. That's another option. I'm going to take it for granted that you're following all of my 5 flags models, especially the adjacent enemy rule. Let me cover that really quickly. This is not a really business topic, but it's a 5 flags topic, but it is germane here. The adjacent enemy rule means you cannot live in any country that adjacently borders another country that hates it, okay? Or area that hates it. So you can't live in Israel, sorry, okay? You can't do it. You can't live in any country that borders Russia. Sorry, Russia is run by a dictator who likes to invade countries whenever he wants. And so if you live in any country that borders Russia, you're taking a risk and you're rolling the dice. I wouldn't live there. So just be aware of that. But as long as you're not doing that, I live in the UAE and Paraguay, all surrounded by friendly countries. So I don't have that issue. Just be aware of that one. Also, you can sell to, lost my train of thought. Hang on. I remember now as I check my own notes. You can sell to countries where your nationality has some kind of DHV benefit. What do I mean by that? Well, here's an easy example. There's a bunch of examples. In Australia, and this is less true than it used to be, but it's still true. In Australia, Americans are perceived as better business people than Australians. Okay, so if you're an American and you do some kind of business consulting thing in Australia, you may get more traction than being a business owner in the United States. There's an old concept called the expert from afar, and the fact that you live far away makes you of higher value in the eyes of certain niches. That's just a common thing in business. So it could be that someone of your nationality, someone of your race, may be perceived as higher value in the business world than people who are in their own country. Sometimes if you're white, it helps you. Now, sometimes if you're white, it hurts you. Depends on the scenario, depends on the country, depends on the nature of that country, and there are a bunch of other factors. But if you're international, you probably are already aware of several places where you, either your job or your country of origin or your culture of origin or your race or your nationality might be perceived as a little higher to the people that you're selling. Now, sometimes this can work against you. Sometimes you can surprise people. I get that here in Dubai. Americans never leave America because they've lost their minds. And so in Dubai, there's millions of people who live here, and I'm the only American. I'm making a joke, I'm exaggerating, but there are very few Americans here in Dubai, very few. There's a bazillion Europeans. So whenever someone sees me, the assumption is always that I'm from Europe. And if they're like from India, Pakistan, Asia, even if I speak to them in English, they don't know accents very well. They assume they're like, oh, you from UK? Oh, you from Germany? No, USA. And when I say I'm an American, everyone goes, whoa, really? Because there's so few Americans here because Americans like to stay in their collapsing country. So just be aware of that. Sometimes it's not a DHV, sometimes it's just shock. And I don't think shock necessarily helps or hurts. I'm talking about when you're perceived as something higher, especially if what you're doing, you're rare. Now, if I started doing business in Paraguay, in terms of, I'm not going to do this, but I could. Maybe I will do this. I don't know. I haven't decided. If I start doing business consulting or business training in Asuncion, Paraguay, and I brand myself as this American who now lives in Paraguay, I'm going to do really well there just because I'm an American. And I also look American as compared to Paraguayans. They can look at me and tell that even though there's white people in Paraguay, like this isn't one of us. This is a gringo. So you have that as well. So those are just various options you could look at in terms of who to sell to. Make sure, though, you follow rule number 1, which I've covered on a prior video. Keep things as simple as possible. If you're going to sell across the border for your first business, follow the models I've talked about here to keep things as simple as possible. Same language, fluent language, compatible cultures, etc. Otherwise, just leave it alone. Sell in your same country, but maybe to a different city or something like that. I'm just saying there's lots of international opportunities you can take advantage of. And here's the beauty of this. Once you start making money and you start, you know what you're doing, you're making several thousand a month, then you can branch out internationally and do whatever the hell you want. I've done business all over the world. Now, I didn't start doing that in the 90s. It took me a few years to get comfortable to do business all over the world. But I've now done business all over the world. I have made big money from countries way far away from the United States, and I will continue to do so, actually more so as time goes on, because one of my objectives is to make the minimum amount of money possible from the collapsing USA long term. I don't want to rely on the USA. I know the USA is going. So once you have this baseline, you can expand this to all kinds of international options. So you have a plan of what you do now, and then a future plan for what you're going to do later.